be recording this event. So if there's any information that you receive that you'd like to see again, let us know and we can send you the link. I'd like to welcome Shilpa and Tracy, and thank you both for agreeing to do this presentation. I think people are really excited and anticipating the information that is to come. And we know it's ever changing, so don't feel like whatever you say here is going to be stuck in stone. So Tracy is from Inspired Vacations, and Shilpa represents the Lethbridge Lodging Association. So they will kind of start a presentation about what the future of tourism may look like for us. So ladies, please take it away.
Okay, so Dominic, I'll have you advance. So Tracy and I got together and really had fun putting this together, I think, because as Dominic has said, you know what, things are ever changing. Certainly the one thing that we can relate to from the last 16 months is this travel COVID style. We can all feel it and we're yearning for travel. Today, what Tracy and I hope to share with you is some information about tourism. From our perspective, a lot of the information is what we have kept an eye on for the last 16 months and continue to do so as we formulate strategies moving forward. And I'm sure other organizations in this session are doing the same thing. We're constantly keeping our eye out for what are the trends, what's happening, what are other folks doing. So what we thought is we'll start with sharing a little bit of information and some stats, and some of it may not be new to you, certainly, and you will have heard about it through news and whatnot, but it kind of sets the stage for where we're heading. So we'll go to the next slide. So the state of tourism in Canada, I mean, if we look at sort of all the different perspectives, certainly the visitor economy, and we've talked about this, faced unprecedented losses in 2020. So we've talked about massive business closures, or in some cases, businesses that have been open, closed, and rising unemployment. Certainly the economic impact from global business, leisure travel, we're not expected to return to pre-pandemic levels until 2024. I know when this started and we had one of the first chamber sessions, I had talked about an L-shaped recovery for accommodations and anticipating 2023. And back then we didn't know how long this thing was going to go. So now we're looking at kind of 2024. And from our perspective, accommodations certainly, and Tracy will sort of comment from her perspective, but virtual meetings continue to replace travel. International travel isn't set to resume at the levels that it was pre-pandemic until consumer confidence increases. We all know what's happening in terms of airlines. Fleets have been grounded. Cruises are uncertain, and certainly Canada has banned cruise ships until 2022. Tour industry, domestic, international tour operators, we know have sustained losses. Many companies are reevaluating plans. I know we have a local group that we were working with that is reevaluating their plans. The good news on the tour industry, I was on a call yesterday that included David Goldstein from Travel Alberta. And the one thing that we do here in terms of the tour industry is that large group tours are starting to be booked in the United States, and the requirement is full vaccination. So there's a little bit of hope there. And then of course, in terms of hotels in major markets and certainly locally, we've recorded the lowest occupancies ever, with revenues falling about just shy of 80%, which is devastating to accommodations. With accommodations, we were certainly deemed to be essential. So massive layoffs with staff, but brick and mortar still had to be happening. And we certainly provided the best services that we could. I'm going to turn it over to Tracy to add anything to that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very good overview. And I just had a couple thoughts to share on that. I know when this first all happened, we kind of, I know from our industry went, well, that's okay. If we can't travel internationally, we'll travel within Canada. that's also been stifled. You know, the Maritimes have been completely locked down just to their own bubble since March of 2020. And so what we really have seen, again, with the open and closed even in Alberta is, you know, it's been a challenge for even anyone locally in the hospitality industry. The cruising, you know, this is why those who are lobbying the government right now so hard. This year, we stand to lose $3 billion just in the Canadian cruise market because the US has actually put in place new legislation to bypass Canada. So we really are looking to get all of those things restarted to help our economy. And as vaccines roll out and we get our numbers up, people are feeling much more confident. So those are some of the things that you know, we're looking to have in place. When I would say last kind of November, December, internationally speaking, we were looking a little bit more hopeful, simply because we had COVID insurance in place. The airlines were taking on responsibility, and we had the rapid test program. So that was for a short amount of time. So we're really now eager again after, you know, the extra restrictions came in early 2021 to get things opened up. Okay, next slide, please.
So going from Canada to Alberta, I mean, you know, we talk about the impacts, the economic impacts of COVID, but we thought we would include this little snapshot that Travel Alberta has to give everybody a sense of just what the tourism sector consists of in terms of accommodation, food, beverage, recreation, transportation, and just the losses that we have sustained in the industry because of COVID-19. So of course, air transport revenues are down massively. Accommodations, again, our revenues have just plummeted. Occupancy rates are down, and until things open up, and that's not just in terms of travel, but in terms of events and sports and whatnot. The accommodation industry really is going to take a long time to get back. And one of the things that we rely on massively is food and beverage. So with restaurants going through their opening, shutting down, opening, it really hurts us as well. We feel the impact, and so we really rely on that sector from a visitor experience perspective. Tracy?
I'll have you go to the next slide, if you would, Dominica. So speaking to where we have seen things, and again, a lot of what we're seeing right now, in addition to what Shilpa was sharing about the opening and closing just within our own province, domestically, we have different rules. Each province has been able to, you know, have their own COVID plans in place. And so just kind of to share a little bit more, you know, we're coming out of this. Alberta has our relaunch program in place, and it's quite aggressive for us to kind of get back to what we'll call normal. Just to share a bit about what's happening. So Ontario is speeding up their opening plans. So they've been in a heavy lockdown. They actually have moved it up to Friday. The Maritimes, as I said, have been pretty much completely locked down. So if we were to travel to the Maritimes, or they were to come here and go home, they are dealing with a 14-day quarantine simply for people traveling within the country. So that's been a huge deterrent. And Manitoba, for instance, if they leave the province, when they return, they have a 14-day quarantine. So all of those pieces have really made it difficult for anybody to get any traction in terms of, you know, doing those hotel stays or eating in our local restaurants and pubs. The other thing, the piece that I think is kind of interesting, the museums and historic sites, a lot of those you'll find have been closed. So, you know, support them when they reopen. The beautiful thing about some of the grants and relaunch programs is that they've been able to receive funding. So, you know, just like all of us, they're getting everything in place to have some, you know, revamped places. They've been doing the spring cleaning. They've improved their programs and that sort of thing. So those are great, great things that are coming up. Next. Oh,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I was just going to add one more thing. And if you look at total park attendance, and I think we can all relate to what happened last summer and possibly again this summer, we're going to see it again, is of course with indoor restrictions, everything pushed to the outdoors. So the parks have seen unprecedented attendance, which is good. People are still through that yearning for travel, finding activities that they could do. So go to the next one. So this one, you know, again, just some numbers to give you a sense that we hope that things increase as things loosen up with the open for summer plans and whatever happens with the border. But it is going to take a while before we get to 2019 levels.
Mm-hmm. And a little bit more on that. What we have been seeing, you know, spring has sprung and people seem to be optimistic with our Alberta, you know, numbers going down, the vaccine rates going up, and Alberta, you know, with their reopening plan, the phones have been ringing. People are anxious to get out there, whether it's locally or they're looking long-term at you know, the various types of trips that they've had on hold. They've had lots of time to think about it. So that's what we're going to see. The outlook for the summer is very much, you know, still Canadian based, still staying close to home. I think, Catherine, when we were talking earlier, you know, as we get back to seeing people in person, it's going to take a little bit of easing into things. So that's where we're at for, you know, that comfortability factor. The other thing to keep in mind as an outlook is Canada as a nation is a little bit behind. You know, we were slower on our vaccine rollouts. The US really ramped things up. I know a few months ago we thought, oh goodness, what's going on down there? But their vaccines rolled out. So they have been booking. And so when we get back out there, we're going to see a little bit, I won't call it competition, but the availability might be a little bit reduced because we're a little bit slow to this party. Next slide, please. So yes, domestic tourism. And I was really pleased that I was able to do this presentation with Shilpa because I'm very passionate about local as well. It's just so nice. You know, I'd love to bring more people to Southern Alberta. And I think this is actually a good opportunity. Again, you know, Alberta Tourism and our local different places have been doing a really good job of promoting. So I hope that when everything opens up, we'll see more international visitors coming here. And so my real word of encouragement is this summer, support local. Let's go explore those restaurants and pubs. Let's stay in a hotel and do some different things. We've got lots of great things around here to really boost our own economy and our own local suppliers. As vaccines are key. They're absolutely 100% the key for us getting outbound into the world and for those coming in to visit us. Obviously, the US is the one that's closest, and we have a really close association with them being so close to the border. So we've got 2 years of pent-up demand. So we're seeing that as the vaccines rise, people are feeling confident about getting out there. The other thing to keep in mind is be aware of what the entry requirements are. That's what I've been watching a lot, and they do change. So we'll be talking a bit more about that as we go. And just be aware it won't be like it was before the pandemic. It's going to take a while to get back to quote unquote normal. And so those are some of the things that we need to make our travelers aware of, just as, you know, we're sanitizing and masking and all of those sorts of things here locally. We're going to look at those as we head out into the world as well. Next slide, please. Our travel behavior. So it has been 16 months of a huge challenge for us. We are very used to having our independence and freedom, and we have been at home pretty much. I don't know a whole lot of people who've been doing too much travel. So it's been a huge frustration for many of us. We have missed our friends and family, whether that's locally or loved ones who are in destinations that we haven't been able to get to or haven't been able to get to easily. Our business worlds have changed. Obviously, we have been working online almost exclusively, and we are really ready to get back. We all talk about mental health, how that has taken a toll. And so some of the things we're going to see is, as I just mentioned already, optimism. We are feeling optimistic about the future. The higher the vaccine percentages come, the more people are really just kind of itching to get out there. And so we're seeing that. The benefits as well. So I don't think anybody really thought about it as much as now, but I was reading an article recently, and the longer we have to anticipate a trip, the greater the benefit to us emotionally. So for anyone who's thinking about, a trip that they're wanting to make, or, even those weekend getaways for the summer, it's going to improve our moods. So that's what we're encouraging people to do right now is if you're thinking about something, get on with it. So, and we've really seen that, and some of the trends that we'll talk about, we are actually experiencing here locally in Lethbridge as well. Next slide, please.
So, yeah, I can speak to this one. So, we look at what's happening in other markets, and all constantly looking at data. So this slide is great to show that we have saved over the last 16 months. Some of us, may have been buying houses and whatnot, but certainly we have not been able to travel to the extent that we have wanted to. And so this slide just shows how much we have saved, and almost every country you've got savings, but Canada is right up there. And so really the anticipation is that you've got savings and pent-up demand. There is absolutely going to be travel, tempered only by consumer confidence, border restrictions, and the rate of vaccinations. Next.
So here are some statistics about kind of what we're anticipating for, it's that air traffic, that's a big piece. And so whether that's coming into Canada or we're heading out, it is going to take a while, but just some things that we've seen in the last little bit with the US in particular. Every time they have a major holiday, they are breaking the records for post-pandemic air traffic. So with Memorial Day that they just celebrated, they saw, the highest numbers that they've seen post-pandemic. So the confidence is there, and they're really getting out and traveling. It is going to take a while. Our airlines, really, quite honestly, have been decimated by the reduction. It's, in a lot of cases, it's up to 95% less than what we had options for before. They were, they complied with the federal government's request in January to stop their flights. And so it's going to take a while. Even we're seeing it locally with restaurants in particular, a lot of people have left the industry. So that's happened as well, with air ground crews, pilots, all of the people who work in the airline industry. It's going to take a while to recall. So that's part of it. And so again, just what we're going to see locally is we're getting that ramped up. And I think long term, we're going to see some people who will not feel confident traveling internationally, right? Getting on those airplanes and that sort of thing. So that really bodes well for domestic travel, and we need that as well. Maybe some more road trips. We'll have some more people staying in, the the larger vacation homes and that sort of thing as families. And so some of the trends that we saw before will be changing, but people are still wanting to get out of home. Next one, please.
So one of the things that we rely on is sort of in terms of trends and planning for what's happening is, what's happening with travel searches. And so when we look at something like this, we get very excited and optimistic because in spite of the international travel restrictions being in place still, people are sort of looking forward to travel. And so if you see the graphs, the travel searches are increasing both within Canada for Alberta, but also from international markets, which is something that we can all plan towards to say, okay, we are slowly getting out of this. And again, as case numbers go down and vaccinations go up and various countries are starting to discuss opening up borders, we can be optimistic. Next.
So this one, we're looking at, again, air is just such a statistic that we use for lots of our different ways that we're going to see people traveling. So part of the challenge has been, well, the big pieces of our challenge have been the hotel quarantine that was mandated in January and has been continued to date. So those are major deterrents for both Canadians and our international people coming in. And then further to that, it is a mandatory 14-day quarantine. The rapid test program that we did have at the Calgary airport, which again, really kind of helped our Canadian market, or our Alberta market, sorry, that was removed. And so that was one piece that was kind of exciting for people to know that they could go, and with the proper testing in place, they didn't perhaps have to quarantine as long. Most people can take a week or two for vacation, but they can't add on that extra 2 weeks to stay at home afterwards. So that's part of it. The PCR testing, most of that has been at the traveler's expense. So when we're looking at a pre-test, a post-test when you're on arrival, and then afterwards, those again, especially for families, when you're looking at that, they're going, you know what, we just can't budget for all of these tests that we may have to be doing. So the Health Canada actually put a task force in place. It was their expert advisory panel to look at the science and the data. And they came back with recommendations a couple weeks ago saying, remove the hotel quarantine. And then based on, your level of vaccination for both the Canadians and the incoming travelers, to either remove the quarantines completely or to do a combination with testing and reductions. So those are the big pieces that we're looking at. The government said, thank you very much for that. And now it is really looking as though they're going to be taking some of those recommendations and making some changes. So we're very hopeful about that. And the other thing, yes, as Shilpa mentioned, various countries around the world are putting programs into place, and, again, careful, and they may change. As Dominica said at the beginning, she won't hold us to things, but this is what Shilpa and I know as of today is what we're sharing. So I'm regularly seeing various countries in, England is opening up. Spain just announced yesterday, France and Italy, Greece, all of those places. So that's one aspect. Then we also need to watch what's happening when we come home. Next slide, please. Which I'm just kind of carrying over from the previous slide. It really does look to that anticipation of getting on a plane and, heading out, whether it's across Canada, or it's across the ocean to do that. Our airlines are very eager to increase their capacity. So, and in fact, Air Canada, for one, has a program with the federal government, and part of that program was to reinstate the routes that they had removed just because they just couldn't facilitate the reduced numbers. So we have been seeing that come back, and they're anticipating in the next 2 and 3 months that even more of those routes will be back in place. So we are very optimistic that we will see increased air traffic happening and the availability. And as I mentioned, it's actually today. They're having big meetings with a number of industry leaders, hospitality associations, airlines are all meeting with the federal government. So I would expect that we will soon see some changes. June 21st is the date that the Canadian-US border is closed till. And I know there's pressure from the south for sure to get it opened up so that we can get moving back and forth with our largest trading partner. Next one, please.
So the hotel picture. Domestic demand certainly has helped hotels, no question about that. And if we look at the graph, certainly summertime is an extremely important time for us. So we have been planning for this summer with sort of all the uncertainty that we've had in terms of, what are happening with cases and variants and government restrictions and whatnot. So volumes are certainly recovering. We hope to peak again this summer. Winter is an issue, and not just for Lethbridge, but everywhere. We've got a lot of snowbirds that have been sort of grounded here in Canada. And so one of the concerns is definitely going to be what happens, if everybody is allowed to sort of cross that border and go do what they want to do. And a lot of us with vacations, we were joking about we've never felt paler in our lives before. Because we haven't been able to go on vacations. In Lethbridge, we are encouraged by events coming back. So certainly, all the things we've seen from the NMAX starting to be able to host events and whatnot. We're hoping sport makes a comeback. We know meetings is going to take a little while, certainly another year or so before it even sort of gains traction, just because of the way we have changed our habits of working and meeting. And so from our perspective in hotels, we've had to get really creative and innovative in terms of how do we make sure that we can attract folks and try and capture the demand. And in Lethbridge, we're competing against the likes of Banff and Jasper and whatnot. So we've really had to get our thinking caps on, look at these trends and understand how we can distinguish ourselves. So next. So one of the things that we continue to look at, and it's interesting to sort of compare, so this is stats as of May 4th when we had government restrictions, but it's interesting to note that when we look at resident sentiments towards welcoming visitors, and certainly from the Lethbridge Lodging Association perspective, when we do our marketing, we're looking at how do people feel about us sort of encouraging people to come visit. The nice thing is, even when restrictions were in place in May, Albertans are pretty welcoming of people from other parts of Canada and other parts of our own province. And we just anticipate that those numbers will increase as vaccination rates increase and cases go down. And certainly what happens on either side of us in terms of the provinces and their restrictions impact us. But as we've watched these stats over the last 16 months, we've found that they're really tied to vaccination rates and government restrictions. So next.
So we are yearning to travel. This is, it's like I don't know, it's the most well-known thing out there that we all want to get out of our homes. The way we're feeling, and again, when we look at Alberta, we've had some of actually probably the most open months in the country. As I was mentioning, if we slide over to the Atlantic portion, they very much have been very happy to be in their bubble. And, the only lockdowns they've had is not being able to visit other Atlantic provinces. So, you know, it only stands to reason that they have a very high percentage of, you know what, we're really okay traveling amongst ourselves, and not so much. The other thing that really does affect them is the availability of air. We've seen in recent months a lot of the routes being reduced or eliminated by Air Canada and WestJet out on the East Coast. So, you know, I think maybe that's a coping mechanism, is that they're okay being home because it's really difficult for them to go out anyway. Here in, you know, in the West, we tend to be, I think, a little bit more entrepreneurial, a little bit more exploratory. And so we see some of the highest numbers for our feeling towards being comfortable traveling within the country, across the border to the US. And then obviously we have a lot more comfortability traveling internationally. But at the same time, it is a bit like a baby taking its first steps again and heading out, you know, a little bit farther from home. So that's kind of what we're going to see. Again, I think it bodes well for our local Southern Alberta economy, Alberta as a whole, and Canada. We're going to see a summer of domestic travel. And even some of, you know, my travel partners have really ramped up their Canadian options. Again, just adding in that comfortability with the COVID protocols and those sorts of things. So we'll have our Canadian people traveling first, and then be welcoming for our international guests. Next one, please. So the mitigating factors, the challenges to all of this optimism, it really does rely on reopening borders, both within the country and a big one, of course, with the US. As I said today, I was very pleased to wake up and read a report that the Prime Minister is saying we'll have a staged approach to reopening. There are no details just yet, but as I said, there are a lot of meetings happening, you know, this week, and I think that in the coming days we're going to have some of those plans in place, which we really have been asking for. Eliminating quarantine measures. So again, that hotel quarantine is probably the biggest one. We currently have a very big fine. It's $5,000 for those who are wanting to skip out on that hotel quarantine. It can cost upwards of $2,000 staying in it. The reports have not been fabulous, so obviously we don't want that. And really overall, the statistics show it hasn't been truly effective. So, you know, and that's not me saying that, that's based on the data that the various groups have put together. The vaccinations, of course, as we've said already, are going to be key. One of the big keys is we're hearing that they're going to be called vaccination certificates, and how we implement those so that we can speedily get through, you know, customs lines and security lines. That's going to be a big piece. The government has put in the Arrive Can app that was developed shortly after COVID hit. So, you know, that's one thought, is perhaps that information will be linked in with that Arrive Can app just to speed things up. So that's going to be one of the big pieces. And again, you know, we have people who are on both sides of vaccines. So we're just really watching those requirements and what, you know, testing requirements and quarantine measures are when people are traveling to other countries. So that's where we're at right now. As I mentioned, currently we've got the pre, on arrival, and post testing. So, and those are all important things. We needed to have them. We just see as the vaccinations ramp up and our numbers are going down, that we need to adjust. And then travel advisories. Watch those travel advisories. They are changing regularly. If you would go to the next slide, please. It's just kind of a good example. So the UK has implemented basically a traffic light system. So they've got green, amber, and red countries, and, you know, and they change. So for instance, so the date when this one was done, Portugal was on the green list, and Portugal's now been downgraded or will be downgraded to the amber list. So that's something that in my world, for my travelers, and we are certainly doing some bookings. So the countries they're going to, I'm watching really closely. And the reason I'm watching Portugal so closely is I have people heading off there, not, in not too long of a distance. And so I'm kind of going, oh gosh, what does that mean? And how quickly can they get back up to green and that sort of thing. So those are some of the things that we are just needing to be really cognizant of, so that we don't get ourselves into trouble and, all of a sudden we're maybe not able to go where we had planned to. So that's sort of what we're looking at there. We'll move on to the next slide and talk about some trends.
So there's some trends that started with this that aren't going to go away. So health, hygiene, and safety are going to be a priority no matter what sector we're looking at, whether it's hotels, restaurants, air traffic. Certainly pandemic-related protocols had to be put into place at warp speed when we started on this. And they are going to continue, if for nothing else, than to ensure that we encourage travelers to book again, come again, continue traveling. The other thing that we were forced to pivot to more was the use of technology, and it's continued to disrupt how travel is planned and experienced, and disrupt in a good way because we had to be innovative. So anywhere from remote working is going to continue for a while, but things like contactless payments, and also app-based hotel keys or QR codes for menus or getting information, reducing touch points everywhere we go, is certainly a trend that you're not going to see go away. A lot has been invested, and now a lot of that stuff we've been forced to get used to, and it just is becoming habit.
Some of these other trends that we're talking about, greener destinations, trips closer to home, more immersive type travel. I read a book last year. It was called Overbooked. And I don't think they knew a pandemic was coming, but what's happened is it's really actually a lot of the challenges with how much we were out and seeing different places in the world have kind of slowed us all down. And so what we're going to see is some more, immersive things happening. Destinations like Venice are perhaps going to be more sustainable. They've made rulings that the large cruise ships won't be stopping and inundating that poor city with thousands of people during the day. So those are some of the things we're seeing. We're also seeing bucket list. So as we were talking about, the landscaping's done, the renos are finished, you've purchased that new house, that budget is there, and people are going, you know what, we've saved, we're going to get that, swim out room, we're going to upgrade how long we're going. We're going to see some of those sorts of things. And then another big one is multi-generational travel. We have missed graduations, we've missed weddings, we've missed our loved ones, and we don't want to get together at home because we've all been there. So we're really seeing people saying, you know what, why wait? Time is short. So I think what we've learned through the pandemic is the value of time and our loved ones. So we're actually seeing that as a new trend emerge, and really the importance of being with our loved ones. The next one, please. Speaking to this, so as a company, Inspired Vacations, obviously we were just as grounded, and kind of basically what we were doing was helping our clients get rescheduled or cancel and deal with insurance claims and such. So it wasn't very fun this last year. And we really did feel as well for our local partners. And so back in December, we came up with an idea to do staycations. So what it did is it really helped provide a little bit of something fun to look forward to as much as possible throughout the winter months. So that was one of our pivots. And it was kind of all about keeping the dream alive, helping people not have to think about what they were cooking or, even watching on Netflix Friday night, and giving them some information about fun destinations they might want to look at going forward. So that was a lot of fun for us. We hope we helped, a number of local people keep their winter nights a little bit more interesting. And we're still continuing. As I said, I'm very passionate about local. And so we are just about to launch a farm to table tour with the Alberta Sugar Beet Growers and Cattlemen's Chop House out in Picture Butte. So more to come on that. But those are sort of the things from our perspective where probably most people wouldn't think of us as, a local provider as such. But those are some of the things we're doing, and working on a couple others, just sort of as we start to ramp up and help out local, as we continue to look to move a little bit further afield. Next slide.
Oh, there we go. So from the Lethbridge Lodging Association perspective, for our member hotels, we saw the trend towards experience-based travel, and we thought, you know what, in the early days of COVID, we were scrambling and wondering what to do. And of course, the priority was getting all those protocols in place. But once we saw that this was something that wasn't going to be over quickly, we put our thinking caps on and we looked at it as an opportunity to do some creative, innovative things that would actually help put Lethbridge on the map in different ways. So a combination of, this slide shows a combination of things that we've tried to do. So the top picture with the bathtub, we creatively turned 5 hotels, a room in each, into sort of spotlight rooms where we could have people come in a safe way, take some Instagram photos, Facebook photos, and try and sort of infuse a little bit of lighthearted fun and still keep hotels at top of mind with people. And we managed to, depending on the restrictions, attract folks from out of town on that. Slide, the picture below that, gives you an idea of what hotels are doing in terms of creativity. That's a picture of the glamping room at the Sandman Signature. And it's kind of like, campgrounds are full. So why don't, families still want to travel? Here's some fun ways for families to enjoy and create some special memories during this time. The other thing that we've thought of, as hotels, of how do we capture that pent up demand? How do we compete with the Banffs and the Jaspers? And what is it that we have that we can sort of try and take advantage of and use as a unique selling proposition? So a couple of things we're introducing this summer. 48 and 48 is trail-based kind of a challenge that we have going all through summer. We've got specific trails in Lethbridge we want to introduce to people to say, you know what, if you want to be outdoors and want to be in sort of a smaller pace or slower paced, nicer, sunnier place than maybe in the mountains, come to Lethbridge, hike 48 kilometers in 48 hours, and you get your hotel room paid for. We've also partnered with Lethbridge Exhibition on smoke, wind, and fire events that are focused on barbecue, the trend towards barbecue and outdoor cooking. So from our perspective, COVID's been good in the sense that we've had to be creative, and we'd have to come up with products that are experience-based that help us differentiate ourselves from other cities, other places that could capture that pent-up demand. And so one of the things that's really unique that we're introducing this summer is the Odyssey, and I'll have Dominica just play the video on the next slide for you to give you a sense of what we're doing. So this was an example. I don't know if you were able to get the sound on that or not, but it's an example of something unique that we're doing, an amazing style race, and looking at sort of the unique stuff we have around agritourism in the area and challenging teams of two to come to Lethbridge, stay in hotels, participate in a challenge that's kind of a full day challenge, doing different things in the surrounding region with hopes of winning $5,000. And so that's our take on, how do we expose people to the unique things we have in Southern Alberta, and capture that desire, that yearn for travel and ability to sort of challenge themselves intellectually, physically, and earn $5,000. So that's something that's happening August 14th, and all of our member hotels are involved in that. Tracy?
Awesome. Yeah, I love a good old fashioned paper map. And the fact that they're doing, agri-touring, that's something that when we're going into other countries, we're really showing off. And oh my goodness, we have so much down here in terms of different crops, and it's so important to our economy. And I think if we could get the rest of the world coming in to see it, and we were really boasting about how fabulous it was, that's a real area of opportunity. So yeah, I'm excited that that's something that we're really starting to focus on. In terms of what's going on, obviously, Alberta is almost ready to go. Thursday, our restaurants are going to be open for dine-in. Some of our, different things have started last week, the aesthetics and such. So we're really all excited about that. And so it's going to make just traveling within the province that much easier. So we're looking at that. Federally speaking, I don't believe we've seen reopening plans from every province, but we've certainly seen them from the majority. And so that's going to be something that we're going to want to look at. The Maritimes have always been very popular for the fall, and that looks to be kind of where we're going for seeing those beautiful fall colors. So that's one thing that we're excited about. And then, yeah, transborder. So opening that up, we know that here in Southern Alberta, there's lots of people that are heading down into Montana, for instance. And so that's an important piece for us locally. Next slide, please. I'm just going to end with some travel tips. The biggest one is get planning. We are, like I said, we are behind. So if you've got somewhere that you're looking at for later this year into 2022, talk with us. The thing that, we're all very inward focused, I will say. What we need to think about is all the people that have future travel credits and have postponed and rebooked. So when we're going out thinking, everyone else, they've been jumping on it. So I've really been finding that some of the availability isn't just what we thought it would be. The other thing is, just as an example, I have one location in Mexico. We used to have 4 carriers going there. We now have 1. And instead of almost daily opportunity to get there, we have once a week. So those are some of the things that we kind of haven't been thinking about. So that's my biggest tip, is get on it. Talk with an advisor. There are so many little details to think about now, as we've been talking about, what's it like when I'm going to get there? What's it like when I get home? What if something changes? Talk with someone who can walk you through that. We've been paying attention and keep up with that. We get updates every day. Check your documents. Dust off that passport and see when it expires. Another big one people don't think about sometimes is our driver's licenses. We don't get notices anymore when they're about to expire. So you don't want to get somewhere and think you're going to get a rental car and pull out your license and find out that it expired a few months ago. And all of a sudden you can't travel around like you thought you were going to. So those are some tips for looking at that. Insurance. It was always important. So not just cancellation, but the trip interruption, medical, of course, looking at that. And there is COVID specific insurance available. So that the insurance providers came up with that shortly after. So if that's something that we need to look at, it is available for us. So you want to do that. Reviewing terms and conditions. Again, they always existed, but we were going, it didn't matter. Now we have to think about that a little bit more. Again, with those countries moving from the ambers and the greens into reds and those sorts of things, we need to make sure that we're looking at things with some really good conditions on it, so that if plans change, we call it lift and shift. We can do the cancellations, we have lower deposits, all of those sorts of things. So again, that's where an advisor can come in really handy for you to make sure that you're really well looked after. An important website is travel.gc.ca. So everything is updated in there for travel. Different countries with their travel restrictions, what our government's saying about them, those sorts of things. So also a tip on there, when you're leaving the country, if you're not working with someone, make sure that you register that you have left. Particularly right now, we still are under a level 3 travel advisory. So it's important that the government knows where you're going. So if something unfortunate happens, we know where you're at and we can help you, or they can help you get home. And then really managing your expectations. So there are, things look different here at home. Things are maybe going to look different when you go. Everyone's a little bit rusty. And so just practice that patience and kindness. And a lot of countries where we're going haven't had government programs like we have. So, they truly have been suffering financially, and they're eager to welcome you back. And so perhaps even feel a little bit more generous than you might have before. So, even such things like booking pool times that we've been seeing here, locally, that might happen. Buffets are different when you're going out. Even our cruise lines have different rules around, cruise being, I think probably all crews will be fully vaccinated, but are they going to welcome unvaccinated people or only vaccinated people? So a lot of things around that. And yeah, it's just, again, all of a sudden we have to think a little bit more about what we're doing when we head out. So those are some of my main tips to get us all thinking towards heading out of our homes. Next slide, please. And we would like to thank you all for your time. And I know we've shared a lot, but if you have some questions or some comments, we would be happy to chime in and share what we know.
Thank you both so much. Oh, go ahead, Cindy. I was going to make you talk anyway.
No, I just wanted to chime in and thank you both for putting together such an amazing presentation, and really very encouraging and very I can't wait to help you guys promote your local activities. There's a couple things that the chamber is working on federally, and I can't quite announce it yet, but we really want to help you do all the marketing and what we can do to get those explore local kind of initiatives up and running. So I love that August one. So please, please, please share away with us, because we want to help you get the word out. And just thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Cindy.
So there was a question in the chat a little while ago. It says Alberta government has their Alberta tourism grant available of up to 100,000 per partnership, with the intake period for applications between September 1st to 30th. Have there been partnerships with other Alberta markets on accessing these funds?
I can speak to that. If that's the one through Travel Alberta, the Lethbridge Lodging Association partnered with Tourism Lethbridge to apply for a grant. We haven't heard back on that. And we also applied in partnership with Lethbridge Exhibition, and we were successful in a portion of the grant that we applied for. So certainly organizations in Lethbridge are trying to take as much advantage of the programs that are out there and any assistance that is available. We are working together, and I think that is the key, is in this environment, collaborating as much as possible, working together to create a win-win. And Cindy, I am so taking you up on helping me get the word out on that Odyssey, because that I think is going to be super exciting, and it's unique in Alberta, and we think we can attract quite a few people from out of town on that one.
Does anybody have any other questions or comments? We still have a couple minutes left. Looks like everyone's really happy with that presentation. It was very thorough and really well done. So thank you both again. And I look forward to traveling in the future. I'm so excited.
Us too.
Us too.
So thank you all again, and thank you everybody for joining us today. It was a wonderful presentation, and hopefully there won't be too many changes to what you guys have presented on.
Upward, onward and upward.
Thank you,
everyone.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.